Epilogue. By the time you read this, something will have changed. Perhaps Byron will have spoken. Perhaps the silence will have broken in some form. An interview, a statement, something partial and managed that follows the same architecture this book has examined throughout. Or perhaps the silence will have held. Perhaps the professional recovery will have completed itself quietly, the new position announced without fanfare, the jumbotron a footnote in a biography that continues. Perhaps Cabot will have spoken again. The speaking circuit moves forward. The narrative continues to be worked on. A book, perhaps, or another interview, another opportunity to add to the account or revise it, or find the words that have not yet arrived. Or perhaps the platform will run its course and something else will take its place. Perhaps something new will surface. The internet does not sleep. It does not close files. It accumulates, and what it accumulates tends to find its way back into the light. Not always dramatically, not always in the forms that were anticipated, but with the specific persistence of information that was always there and was simply waiting for the moment when the protection around it was no longer sufficient to hold it. And perhaps nothing will have changed at all. Perhaps Megan Kerrigan Byron is still in Maine, or has returned to Northborough, or has made some other quiet decision about her life that the public record will not document because she has chosen, consistently and with evident determination, to make no decisions publicly. Perhaps she and Andy Byron are still legally married, as the November 2025 deed showed them to be. Perhaps they are not. This book does not know. This book has never known. What it has known is that her experience, whatever its specific contours, whatever decisions she has made or will make, is the experience most deserving of acknowledgement in a story that has given acknowledgement to everyone else first. This book was written because a question would not settle. Not the question of whether what happened was wrong. That question is not as complicated as public discourse about it has tended to suggest. It was wrong. The choices that preceded the concert were wrong in ways that had real consequences for real people. The response that followed the concert was wrong in ways that also had real consequences for real people. Both of those things can be true and are. The question that would not settle was simpler and harder than that. It was the question of who was being centered, of whether the story being told by the media, by the interviews, by the months of commentary and analysis and think pieces that surrounded the event, was the whole story, of whether the sympathy flowing through the narrative was flowing in the right direction toward the people most in need of it, or in the easiest direction toward the person with the most platform. That question would not settle because the answer was always no. The story being told was not the whole story. The sympathy was not flowing in the right direction. The person most in need of acknowledgement was the person who had received none. This book is the attempt to correct that, not to reverse it. The asymmetry cannot be reversed by writing, not to punish anyone further. The punishment that was already distributed was disproportionate in its cruelty, and this book has said so clearly, but to insist, in the only way a book can insist, that the full story matters, that the person not in the room is not therefore the person whose experience is smallest. That incomplete accounting is not the same as accounting. There is a woman who works with children who struggle to find their words. She goes to school. She helps them. She navigates whatever she is navigating. In her marriage, in her family, in the specific, private, entirely undocumented process of absorbing something that was done around her and rebuilding a life that can hold it. She does this without a platform, without a communications consultant, without a speaking circuit or an Oprah interview or a PR Week conference at which she headlines a session called Taking Back the Narrative. She simply lives it. The internet gave her a voice she did not choose, the "I am not spiraling, I am ascending" statement that spread across every platform before anyone confirmed it was fabricated. That voice was eloquent and composed and sharply witty and entirely invented. It was the voice the audience needed her to have. The actual woman who changed her name on Facebook and deleted her account and sold a Manhattan apartment and went to Maine and said nothing. She was not that voice. She was something quieter and harder and more real. This book has not given her a voice either. It is not in a position to do that. Only she can speak for herself, and she has chosen not to, and that choice deserves to be respected rather than overridden by anyone with a platform and an argument. What this book has done is refuse to forget that she is there, refuse to accept the version of the story in which she is context rather than center, refuse to let the narrative settle with its emotional intelligence and its therapeutic vocabulary and its carefully managed accountability, into the impression that the full accounting has been offered when the most essential part of it has not. She has not been forgotten here. She is the reason the question would not settle. She is the reason this book exists. Not every story resolves. This one has not. There is still a voice missing. There is still an acknowledgement that has not been given. There is still a gap at the center of the public record, shaped exactly like a woman whose name is Megan Kerrigan Byron and who has, for reasons entirely her own, chosen to live her story rather than tell it. This book does not fill that gap. It marks it. It names its shape. It insists that the gap is there and that the story cannot be considered complete until the people who most owe the acknowledgement have offered it, not to the media, not to the speaking circuit, not to the PR Week conference or the Oprah audience, but to her, directly, by name, without protection. That has not happened. Perhaps it will. Perhaps the internet, which does not sleep, will find the moment when it does. Perhaps the silence will crack, not in the managed, strategically timed way of a prepared interview, but in the unguarded, unscheduled, unprotected way that truth tends to arrive when it can no longer be held back. Or perhaps it will not. Perhaps the story stays exactly where it is, with one side told, one side silent, and the person who most deserved to be at the center of both standing quietly in Maine, living the life that the 15 seconds changed without her consent, having received from the public record precisely nothing that she needed. Either way, she is real. Either way, she was here. Either way, the story is not finished. Not everything brought into the light is injustice. Some things are revealed so that truth can finally take its place. This is still waiting.